The grand concert hall was alive with whispers and footsteps. Every chair seemed to be occupied, and the lights reflected off polished wooden floors, creating a warm glow that made the room feel both magical and important. Outside, the streets had been bustling with excitement for hours. People had dressed carefully, some in fine suits, others in elegant dresses, all eager to see a performance that promised to be unforgettable. Backstage, the atmosphere was different. The excitement was mixed with tension, and everyone moved with a purpose, knowing the show was about to begin. In a quiet corner of the hall, a man with a broom moved slowly, making sure not to disturb anyone. He was small in stature, and his uniform was plain, almost blending into the background. Most people would have walked past without a second thought, assuming he was just another member of the cleaning staff. He worked quickly and quietly, sweeping the floor, dusting off stray crumbs, and straightening chairs left slightly out of place. There was a calmness to his movements, a steady rhythm that seemed almost like a dance. He had done this job many times before, and he knew the hall intimately. Every corner, every crack in the floorboards, every hidden shadow was familiar to him. The world-class pianist, however, had arrived early for final preparations. He moved with confidence and a sense of ownership over the space. His fingers tapped impatiently against the keys of the grand piano, testing sounds, adjusting pedals, and running through a few notes here and there. His presence was commanding, and anyone nearby could feel it. When he noticed the cleaner near the edge of the stage, a smirk crossed his face. He leaned slightly toward his assistant and whispered something, loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. The words were meant to mock, and the cleaner, unaware, continued his work with quiet dignity. The pianist's mockery was subtle but sharp. He joked about how funny it would be if the cleaner tried to play the piano, as if expecting nothing but failure. A few staff members chuckled nervously, unsure if they should laugh or intervene. The cleaner, feeling the sting of the words, paused for a moment. His hands gripped the broom a little tighter, and his back straightened. He did not respond verbally, but there was a fire in his eyes that had been dormant for a long time. He had heard such laughter before, but this time, it did not hurt him the way it once might have. He continued sweeping, but his mind wandered to the past. Years ago, he had played the piano, not as a hobby, but with skill and dedication. He had learned from someone who had pushed him to be better every day, someone who had believed in him when the world had not. He remembered the hours spent practicing, the way his fingers had danced across the keys, the feeling of losing himself in music. It was a different life, one filled with hope and dreams of being seen, of being recognized for something meaningful. But life had taken a turn. Circumstances had changed, opportunities had slipped away, and he found himself here, behind the scenes, cleaning the floors while others performed. He had not forgotten his talent, but the world seemed to have forgotten him. Back in the present, the pianist continued to playfully mock, unaware that the cleaner's memories were stirring something powerful inside him. The cleaner's movements slowed, not because he was tired, but because he was thinking. He imagined sitting at the piano again, feeling the keys beneath his fingers, feeling the music flow through him and into the room. The thought made his heart race, and a small smile appeared on his face, almost unnoticed. He returned to his sweeping with renewed focus, but now there was an energy about him that could not be ignored. The backstage area was a whirlwind of activity. Stagehands moved props and instruments, adjusting lighting and sound. Assistants whispered to performers, and the air was filled with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Despite the chaos, the cleaner moved steadily, carefully avoiding anyone in his path. His broom made a soft swishing sound, almost musical in its consistency. He worked not for recognition, but because it was what he knew, what he could control. In a way, the work grounded him, keeping him present in a world that seemed far removed from his past dreams. Some staff members noticed the small interactions, the way the cleaner's posture had changed, the way his eyes sparkled just slightly when the pianist joked. They exchanged glances, sensing something beneath the surface. One young assistant leaned over and whispered to another, questioning if the cleaner had any experience with music. The other shrugged, unsure, but the curiosity was there. In a place filled with talent and spectacle, sometimes the most extraordinary things were hidden in plain sight. As the audience filed into the hall, the cleaner paused near the piano, adjusting a few sheets of music that had been left on the stand. He looked at the polished keys and felt a strange pull in his chest. It was a reminder of who he had been and what he had loved. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a link to a part of his life that had been set aside, a part of himself that he had nearly forgotten. He ran his fingers lightly over the keys, not playing, just touching them, feeling the familiar texture, remembering the sounds he used to make. There was a warmth in the motion, a silent acknowledgement of the music that lived inside him. The pianist, noticing the cleaner's momentary pause, laughed softly and made another sarcastic comment. He assumed the cleaner would not react, that he would continue to sweep without looking up. But the cleaner did not respond with anger or embarrassment. Instead, he simply smiled and went back to his work. Yet, the smirk on his face hinted that something had shifted. The fire inside him had been rekindled, though it was still hidden beneath layers of humility and restraint. Time moved quickly as the final preparations took place. The stagehands made last-minute adjustments to lighting, microphones were checked, and the pianist ran through a few final chords. The audience murmured with excitement, unaware of the small drama unfolding backstage. In that quiet space, a silent tension built between the pianist and the cleaner. One was confident, almost arrogant. The other was quiet, patient, and holding on to something much deeper. It was a moment of contrast, a clash between pride and hidden talent, and it would set the stage for something unforgettable. The cleaner finished his sweeping and stepped back, surveying the stage. Everything was in place and the hall was ready. He adjusted his cap slightly and took a deep breath, feeling the cool air and the soft hum of electricity and anticipation. The pianist was now fully immersed in his warm-up, his fingers moving with practiced precision, unaware of the story that was about to unfold right next to him. The cleaner stood silently, not as an observer, but as someone who had lived through the music before, someone who understood its power intimately. Back in the audience, people found their seats, chatted softly, and looked around with expectation. No one could guess that a quiet, seemingly ordinary man standing near the piano carried a secret that could transform the evening entirely. The contrast between the grandeur of the hall and the simplicity of the cleaner's presence created a unique tension. Every sweep of the broom, every careful movement, was part of a prelude that no one outside could fully sense yet. As the lights dimmed slightly, signaling the approach of the performance, the cleaner stood near the piano, hands folded loosely in front of him. He did not move forward yet, but he did not step away either. His gaze shifted to the grand instrument, and a quiet determination settled over him. The memory of music, of passion, and of lost opportunities was alive, and he could feel it waiting, just beneath the surface. The pianist, unaware, continued his practice, fingers dancing across the keys, oblivious to the story that was quietly building beside him. And so the stage was set. The audience, the performers, the staff, all were part of a scene that was about to take an unexpected turn. The cleaner, who had once been invisible in this world, now held a presence that was almost tangible. The first spark of what was to come glimmered silently, waiting for the perfect moment to ignite, while the grand hall stood ready to witness something extraordinary. After finishing his sweeping, the cleaner leaned against the edge of the stage and let his thoughts drift. The hall was silent except for the soft hum of electricity and distant footsteps of staff making last-minute checks. He could see the pianist performing warm-ups, the music flowing effortlessly under his skilled hands. The world seemed to focus on the man at the piano, yet the cleaner felt a pull toward it, a memory that tugged at something deep inside. He remembered the time when music had been the center of his life, when the piano was not just an instrument but a voice for his soul. Those days had been filled with dedication, countless hours of practice, and dreams of performing for crowds just like the one forming now. He had started playing as a child. The first time his fingers touched the keys, he had felt a strange, powerful connection, as if the piano understood his feelings in a way words could not. His teacher, an elderly musician with patience and precision, had guided him with care. Every lesson was a journey, each note a step toward mastery. There were competitions, recitals, and small performances in community halls, but always there was a sense that bigger stages awaited. He had been talented, naturally so, but it was the passion that made him excel. Music was not something he did for recognition or fame. It was something that lived inside him, something essential to who he was. Life, however, had other plans. As he grew older, responsibilities multiplied. His family struggled, and he had to make choices that pulled him away from his music. The piano was replaced with work that brought money but no satisfaction. Performances became rare, then non-existent. The passion he had once poured into every practice session was kept in a small corner of his heart, where it was safe but hidden. The cleaner had become skilled at hiding his past, blending into a world that had no room for him anymore. Yet even in these years, he had not completely forgotten. The music had never left him. It slept quietly, waiting for a chance to wake. Standing near the grand piano now, he felt that stir of awakening. His fingers hovered over the keys without pressing them yet. He could remember the sensation of them moving, the way the sound resonated through the wood and filled the room. He let his hands brush lightly across the keys, feeling the familiar curves and smoothness. Even without playing, the piano seemed to acknowledge him, responding to his touch in a way that only someone who had truly known it could sense. The hall might see him as just a cleaner, but in that moment he was something more, something connected to a past that refused to be buried. A few backstage staff began to notice his lingering near the piano. One young stagehand, curious, leaned toward another and whispered questions about him. There was an unspoken understanding among them. Perhaps there was more to this quiet man than met the eye. No one spoke loudly, no one tried to interfere, but their curiosity was genuine. They watched from a distance, sensing a story unfolding quietly but with weight. The cleaner remained unaware of their attention, absorbed in his own recollections and the pull of the instrument. The pianist, still unaware of the depth behind the cleaner's calm demeanor, continued his playful mocking. He had no idea that these remarks carried weight or that they had the potential to awaken something extraordinary. He laughed softly to himself and tapped out a few notes, confident in his superiority. It was a pattern he had repeated throughout his career, a mixture of brilliance and arrogance. Most people never questioned his confidence. They admired it. But in front of the cleaner it was different. There was a quiet resistance, an invisible strength that did not bend or break under ridicule. The cleaner's thoughts wandered further. He remembered his first small audience, a group of neighbors and friends who had applauded with wide smiles and genuine warmth. He remembered a teacher's proud nod after a particularly difficult piece, the feeling of achievement mingled with humility. He remembered the first time he realized that music could move people, that a melody could reach hearts and even change moods. It had been magical and terrifying all at once. And he remembered the disappointment of life's interruptions, how dreams can be postponed and sometimes lost. Yet, despite all, the music remained in him. It had become a part of his identity, something that could never be erased. As he continued to touch the keys gently, he thought of the choices he had made, the paths he had taken, and the moments of regret that had accompanied them. Life had been harsh in its demands, pulling him into labor that was necessary but unfulfilling. Yet, in those quiet moments with the piano, he felt alive again. The memory of music awakened not just skill but emotion, hope, longing, and determination all mingling in a single pulse. He realized that, for him, playing was not about impressing anyone. It was about reclaiming a piece of himself, the part that had survived hardship and neglect. Backstage, the atmosphere began to shift slightly. The pianist's attention was drawn by a subtle change in the air. He looked over at the cleaner and noticed him standing there, fingers brushing the keys, eyes distant and focused. For a moment, he paused, uncertain why the man's presence felt different now. The stagehands exchanged silent glances, sensing tension without understanding its source. There was a quiet intensity about the cleaner that demanded attention, even if it was unspoken. The cleaner took a deep breath and let his hands rest lightly on the keys. He felt the resonance of the piano beneath his fingers, a vibration that echoed through him and reminded him of every moment he had spent learning, practicing, and dreaming. It was a simple action, yet it carried a weight that was almost tangible. The pianist, noticing this, smirked again, assuming it was a harmless gesture. Yet there was an edge of uncertainty creeping into his expression. Something was happening that he could not predict. The cleaner allowed himself a brief smile. It was a quiet, private acknowledgement of the journey he had endured, a small but powerful claim to the talent that had not been destroyed by circumstance. His mind replayed a melody he had once composed, the one that had stayed with him through lonely nights and long days. The notes were vivid in his memory, ready to be called back into existence at the right moment. And as he stood there, near the piano, he felt that moment drawing closer. The fire within him had been rekindled, and though it had not yet ignited fully, it was ready. The pianist, meanwhile, returned to his warm-ups, fingers dancing across the keys with practiced ease. He occasionally cast glances toward the cleaner, mostly with amusement, perhaps a flicker of curiosity, but mostly unconcerned. To him, the cleaner remained an observer, insignificant in the grand scheme of performance. He had no idea that the quiet man standing nearby carried with him a talent that could rival anyone in the hall. A few minutes passed, and the cleaner continued to stand near the piano, feeling the pull of music stronger with every passing second. He allowed his mind to drift further, recalling small details of pieces he had played. The rise and fall of melodies, the subtle shifts in tempo, the way emotion could be conveyed without words. He thought of audiences who had been moved to tears, of teachers who had praised his skill, and of the sense of purpose that music had always given him. These memories created a tapestry of resilience and potential, woven from years of quiet dedication and longing. He also thought of the present moment and how fleeting opportunities could be. Life had a way of surprising people, of opening doors when they least expected it. He realized that this night, with the hall full of eager listeners, the grand piano before him, and the challenge posed by the pianist's mocking, could be one of those moments. The thought sent a shiver of anticipation through him. He knew that if he chose to act, it could change everything, not just for him but for everyone who might witness what he was capable of. Backstage, the energy began to shift. The cleaning staff, stagehands, and assistants all moved with heightened awareness, sensing that something unusual was in the air. There was a subtle electricity, a quiet tension that made even the smallest sound noticeable. The pianist, meanwhile, continued practicing, unaware that his jest had stirred more than amusement. He did not yet know that the quiet man standing near the piano was preparing to remind the world of something that had never truly been lost. The cleaner ran his fingers lightly over the keys one more time, feeling the texture, the weight, and the resonance. The sound was soft but pure, a whisper of the music that had lived within him all these years. He felt a sense of readiness, a growing confidence, and a quiet determination. The past and present converged in this moment, and he knew that soon he would take the next step. The hall was waiting, the audience was unaware, and the pianist was still confident in his superiority. But the cleaner was ready, and within him, the music was alive and waiting for its chance to speak. The backstage area was alive with activity, but a quiet tension now settled around the piano. The pianist continued warming up, his fingers flying across the keys with ease and precision, yet his attention occasionally drifted toward the cleaner. The man stood close to the instrument, hands lightly resting on the smooth surface of the keys, eyes focused yet distant. It was as if he were somewhere else entirely, connected to something invisible that only he could feel. There was a sense of calm authority in the way he carried himself, and although no one else realized it, the stage seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what might come next. The pianist, confident and unaware, made another sarcastic comment about the cleaner. "Maybe you should play something," he said with a mocking smile, his words floating across the space like a challenge. Everyone nearby laughed softly, unsure whether to take the comment seriously or join in the amusement. The cleaner's eyes did not flash with anger, nor did he respond verbally. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the words sink in. He felt a mix of emotions. Embarrassment, yes, but more importantly, a spark of determination that had been dormant for years. This was not about proving the pianist wrong to the world. It was about reclaiming a part of himself that had been hidden for far too long. His mind raced through old melodies, intricate pieces he had practiced endlessly in the past. He remembered the hours spent perfecting each note, the way his teacher had insisted on precision and emotion in equal measure. The music had always been a part of him, living quietly beneath the surface, waiting for a moment when it could re-emerge. And now, as the challenge lingered in the air, that moment felt close. The cleaner's fingers twitched slightly, almost unconsciously, as if responding to the call of the piano. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, yet it carried the weight of years of practice and longing. He stepped closer to the piano, letting his hands hover above the keys. The instrument seemed to hum softly under his touch, resonating in a way that reminded him of the many nights he had spent alone, perfecting pieces for audiences that never came. Every note he had played before, every emotion he had poured into the keys, all converged in this moment. He could feel the energy of the hall, even without the audience fully aware of it yet. There was anticipation in the air, subtle but tangible, and it seemed to wrap around him, urging him forward. Backstage, the atmosphere had begun to shift. Staff members who had once paid little attention to the cleaner now noticed the quiet intensity in his stance. One stagehand leaned toward another, whispering, "Do you think he can really play?" The other shook his head slightly, unsure, yet there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Something was about to happen, something that would make them reconsider everything they thought they knew about the quiet man who had simply been part of the scenery until now. The pianist continued his warm-up, tapping out scales with practiced ease. He glanced toward the cleaner again, still assuming that the man's presence was merely ornamental, harmless. He did not yet understand the depth of experience that lingered in those silent eyes, the years of skill and passion that had not been lost but only quietly stored. He was confident in his superiority, unaware that he had just issued a challenge to someone who had once lived and breathed the very music he now played. The cleaner inhaled deeply, feeling a mixture of nerves and anticipation. He had not played for anyone in years, not in a performance, not in public. Yet he knew the music was still within him, ready to emerge. He placed his fingers lightly on the keys, feeling the familiar texture, the slight resistance, the warmth of the polished wood beneath his touch. It was as if the piano recognized him, as if it remembered the countless hours they had spent together, perfecting notes, exploring melodies, expressing emotions. The bond between him and the instrument was not just skill, it was history, intimacy, and unspoken understanding. He began to play, but only a single note at first. The sound was pure, delicate, and resonant, filling the space with a tone so clear that it seemed to hold the room still. It was a simple note, yet it carried with it the weight of years, the memories of practice and persistence, and the quiet passion of a man who had never truly stopped being a musician. The note lingered, stretching through the hall like a thread, drawing attention without anyone fully understanding why. The pianist's fingers paused mid-motion, uncertainty flickering across his face. He had expected nothing of the sort, had never imagined that the cleaner's touch on the keys could produce anything of value, let alone perfection. Encouraged by the resonance, the cleaner continued, letting his fingers find the next notes, each one flowing naturally into the other. The music began to form a melody, intricate yet effortless, simple yet profound. It was not flamboyant or showy, but it carried emotion and depth, a story told without words. Backstage staff stopped in their tracks, transfixed by the unexpected sound. Their whispers ceased, replaced by awe and disbelief. The hall, though still largely empty of the main audience, seemed to respond to the music, the air itself vibrating with anticipation. The pianist watched in disbelief. His smirk had faded, replaced by confusion and a flicker of respect he did not yet fully acknowledge. He had underestimated the cleaner, assuming that mockery could highlight his superiority without consequence. Now he was confronted with talent and skill that he could not ignore. The cleaner's playing was confident yet delicate, filled with nuance and subtle emotion. Each note was intentional, purposeful, and carried a sense of mastery that only years of experience could cultivate. The cleaner's mind, once clouded with memories of loss and deferred dreams, was now entirely focused on the present. He felt the music flow through him, a current of energy and expression that demanded to be shared. It was not about revenge or proving the pianist wrong. It was about reclaiming a piece of himself, about allowing the music to breathe once more. The more he played, the more alive he felt, as if each note released the tension of years spent hiding his true talent. Backstage, the energy continued to shift. Assistants and stagehands who had initially doubted him now exchanged astonished glances. There was a sense of witnessing something extraordinary, a rare moment where the ordinary transformed into the remarkable. Even the pianist, though initially taken aback, could not help but feel a spark of admiration. The cleaner's music carried a story, one that was lived and felt, not just technically executed. The hall, in its silent anticipation, seemed to acknowledge the depth of the performance even before the audience had fully realized what was happening. The melody grew richer, more expressive, each note weaving seamlessly into the next. The cleaner's fingers moved with confidence, guided by muscle memory, emotion, and instinct. He had not lost the skill that had defined him in his youth. It had only been waiting, like a seed buried in the soil, ready to bloom when given the chance. He felt a connection to the instrument, to the space, and to the potential audience, even before they could hear him. It was a communion of passion and discipline, subtle yet powerful. The pianist could no longer contain his attention. He stepped closer, curiosity overtaking arrogance. He watched the cleaner's hands, noting the precision and the emotion behind each movement. It was no longer a question of mockery. It was a realization that he had underestimated someone whose talent was authentic, refined, and deeply human. The cleaner's playing was not about impressing the audience. It was about expressing something essential and true, something that transcended the ordinary boundaries of performance. The music continued to build, and a soft murmur began to emerge from the audience as they became aware of the unexpected sound. People shifted in their seats, curiosity growing into awe. The notes, though not loud, carried clarity and emotion that drew attention naturally. It was a moment of quiet revelation, where the ordinary world seemed to pause and witness something extraordinary unfold in real time. The cleaner's story, told through music, had begun to bridge the gap between past and present, obscurity and recognition. Every note played reinforced a truth the cleaner had always known but had rarely had the chance to express. Talent and passion do not fade simply because circumstances change. Life can take people down unexpected paths, but what is truly theirs will remain, waiting for the right moment to shine. He played not to prove the pianist wrong or to seek attention, but to remind himself and anyone paying attention that what is genuine cannot be hidden forever. The hall, now alive with the resonance of his performance, seemed to respond as if acknowledging the story behind each note. Backstage staff stood quietly, overwhelmed by the depth of the music and the unexpected display of skill. The pianist, still stunned, finally allowed himself to admit, silently, that he had misjudged the cleaner. The arrogance that had led him to mock the man now seemed misplaced, replaced by a sense of humility that was both new and necessary. The cleaner's fingers continued to glide across the keys, each chord deliberate, each pause intentional. He played with a combination of technical mastery and emotional honesty that captivated anyone who listened, even if they were only aware of the sound and not yet the person behind it. It was an artful balance of restraint and expression, control and freedom. The music was alive, just as he was vibrant and powerful in its simplicity. Time seemed to stretch as he played, each note lingering in the air, weaving a tapestry of sound that resonated with the collective consciousness of the hall. The moment was intimate, yet it felt monumental. The cleaner was no longer merely a figure in the background. He had become the center of attention, though not through force or showmanship. His presence was compelling because it was authentic, rooted in a lifetime of practice, patience, and hidden potential. Finally, as he prepared to conclude the initial phrase, he felt a quiet satisfaction. The music had been shared, the message delivered, and the world. The cleaner took a steady breath and let his fingers settle over the keys, feeling the familiar curves beneath them. Each key seemed to respond instantly to his touch, resonating with the memory of years spent perfecting his craft. The hall had grown quiet, the subtle rustle of shifting chairs and murmured conversations fading as everyone's attention focused on the soft, deliberate music emerging from the piano. The notes were delicate at first, simple and clear, yet they carried a depth that drew listeners in, a silent power that made it impossible to ignore what was happening on stage. He began to play a melody that was both gentle and commanding, each note placed with precision and care. It was not flashy or showy, but it was filled with a quiet strength that spoke directly to the heart. The music seemed to breathe, expanding into the room and touching every listener without effort. The pianist, still standing nearby, stopped mid-motion, fingers suspended in air, completely captivated. He had expected nothing of substance, only a brief, insignificant gesture. What unfolded before him was a revelation. The audience, initially unaware that something extraordinary was happening backstage, began to notice a shift in the atmosphere. The sound from the piano reached them, subtle at first but growing in power and emotion. Heads turned, whispers ceased, and eyes widened as the first full phrases of music carried through the hall. People leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the purity and intensity of the notes. It was impossible not to be drawn into the story being told through the keys. Backstage, the stagehands and assistants could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The quiet man they had overlooked, the cleaner they assumed existed only to keep the hall tidy, was playing with a skill and feeling that transcended expectation. There was a precision in his hands that spoke of years of practice, but more than that, there was soul in every motion, a depth of experience and emotion that made the music alive. No one moved or whispered. They simply listened, held in the grip of a performance that was as intimate as it was extraordinary. The pianist's smirk had vanished, replaced by awe and disbelief. He watched the cleaner's hands glide effortlessly across the keys, marveling at the fluidity, the control, and the expressiveness of every note. For the first time, he realized he had misjudged the man completely. The arrogance that had led him to mock now seemed absurd in comparison to the genuine talent before him. He felt a quiet stirring of humility, a recognition that mastery could not always be measured by appearances or ego. The cleaner continued, allowing the melody to grow, weaving complex yet seamless passages that rose and fell with emotion. The music told a story without words, conveying longing, struggle, and triumph with every chord. Each note was deliberate, each pause intentional, creating a rhythm that was both natural and profoundly moving. He was not performing for applause or recognition. He played because it was part of who he was, a truth that demanded expression. As the hall absorbed the sound, the audience became more aware of the presence behind the music. They sensed something remarkable unfolding, a performance unlike anything they had anticipated. The quiet dignity of the man at the piano, his focus and commitment, commanded attention without a single flourish or dramatic gesture. Every listener felt the authenticity of the moment, the undeniable connection between artist and instrument, between past and present, between the music and the human heart. Backstage, the energy shifted further. The stagehands exchanged glances of amazement, whispers replaced by stunned silence. The pianist, though still holding a fragment of disbelief, felt the music reaching something deep within him. He realized that skill alone was not enough. This was artistry, born from a lifetime of dedication and experience, a voice shaped by hardship and perseverance. The cleaner's playing was not just technical excellence. It was a story lived and expressed through sound. The cleaner's melody began to swell, filling the entire hall. It was a tapestry of emotion, intricate yet effortlessly flowing. Listeners found themselves caught in the ebb and flow of the music, their hearts and minds moved by the subtle power of the performance. Some eyes filled with tears, not from sadness but from the intensity of the connection the music created. The notes seemed to capture the essence of the human experience. Its joys, its sorrows, its quiet moments of hope and determination. The pianist, watching every movement, could not tear his eyes away. He felt a mixture of admiration and humility, a recognition that his earlier mockery had been short-sighted. The cleaner, who had once been invisible to him and to so many others, now commanded attention without effort, proving that talent and passion could never be truly hidden. The man's journey, though long and marked by setbacks, had culminated in this moment of undeniable presence and expression. The cleaner's playing grew even more expressive, the melody evolving into a piece that combined elegance with raw emotion. Each chord struck a balance between strength and sensitivity, guiding the listener through a journey of feeling and reflection. The audience was utterly captivated, held in the spell of a music that felt both intimate and universal. It was as if the piano itself had become a conduit for the cleaner's life experiences, translating years of passion, struggle, and perseverance into sound that could be felt rather than just heard. Backstage, the pianist took a step closer, his arrogance replaced by quiet respect. He realized that he had been blind to what truly mattered, that skill and talent were not always visible at first glance. The cleaner's humility, combined with his mastery and emotion, created a presence that was impossible to ignore. Every note reinforced the truth that greatness often resides in unexpected places, waiting for the right moment to shine. The melody began to reach its climax, the music swelling in both volume and emotion. The cleaner's hands moved with fluidity, each motion precise yet infused with feeling. The hall seemed to resonate with the energy of his performance, and every listener felt the power of the story being told through the piano. There was a moment when time seemed to pause, as if the entire space were suspended in the beauty of the music. It was a rare moment of shared awe, where every person, performer, and observer became part of the experience. Finally, the cleaner played the final notes with quiet confidence, letting the melody settle into a soft, lingering resonance. The room remained silent for a heartbeat longer than expected, the power of the performance sinking in. The audience, caught in the spell, held their breath, sensing the magnitude of what had just occurred. Even the pianist, who had once mocked him, felt a surge of respect and admiration, humbled by the purity and depth of the cleaner's talent. Backstage, a quiet wave of astonishment spread among the staff. They had witnessed a transformation, a moment when a seemingly ordinary man revealed extraordinary skill and emotion. The cleaner, once invisible in the background, now stood as the center of attention without any need for grandeur or recognition. His performance had spoken louder than words ever could, telling a story of perseverance, passion, and the enduring power of true talent. The hall was filled with a sense of reverence, the audience and performers alike aware that they had witnessed something rare and unforgettable. The cleaner remained near the piano, hands resting lightly on the keys, breathing steadily, savoring the quiet aftermath of his music. He had reclaimed a piece of himself, expressed a truth that had been waiting years to be shared, and left an impression on everyone present that would linger far beyond the performance. The pianist finally approached, offering a nod of respect. There was no need for words. The music had said everything. The cleaner's journey from obscurity to recognition, from quiet humility to commanding presence, was complete in this moment. He had not only played for himself but had reminded everyone in the hall that talent, passion, and dedication are forces that cannot be hidden or dismissed. The first note had frozen the hall, and the entire performance had solidified a story of resilience, artistry, and the transformative power of music. The hall remained still for a few moments after the last note faded, the resonance lingering in the air as if reluctant to leave. The audience slowly began to react, soft claps building into a wave of applause that echoed through the grand concert hall. It was not the polite, restrained applause typical of a performance. It was genuine, heartfelt, and full of awe. People who had come expecting a standard recital found themselves witnesses to something extraordinary. Their hands could not stop clapping, their eyes fixed on the man who had just turned the stage into a realm of emotion and expression. The cleaner, once invisible and overlooked, now stood at the center of attention, his quiet presence commanding admiration. He allowed himself a small, humble smile, acknowledging the applause without taking any theatrical bow. His eyes scanned the audience briefly, taking in the expressions of astonishment and wonder. It was a moment of validation, not just for his talent but for his resilience and perseverance. Life had taken him down a path that seemed to have forgotten him, but here, in this hall, he had reclaimed what was always his. The music had spoken for him, revealing a depth and skill that no mocking words could diminish. Backstage, the atmosphere was electric. The stagehands, assistants, and even the pianist were watching, their faces reflecting the transformation that had just occurred. The pianist, who had mocked him hours earlier, now stood quietly, a mixture of humility and admiration crossing his features. He approached the cleaner slowly, no arrogance left in his posture, only respect. The realization had come to him that true talent was not measured by appearances or social status, but by the skill, passion, and dedication that lived within a person. The cleaner's hands rested lightly on the piano as the pianist reached him. There was a brief pause, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. No words were needed to convey what had just happened. The music had spoken, bridging the gap between mockery and recognition, between invisibility and prominence. The pianist nodded, a gesture of respect that seemed almost ceremonial. It was as if the years of oversight and misunderstanding were forgiven in that moment, replaced by an understanding of the cleaner's extraordinary ability. The audience continued to clap, the sound now more like a wave rolling across the hall, energized and enthusiastic. Some people rose to their feet, cheering quietly, unable to contain the emotions stirred by what they had just experienced. The performance had left an imprint on their hearts, a reminder that talent can be found in unexpected places, and that humility often hides the most extraordinary skills. Conversations began to buzz with excitement, speculation, and admiration for the man whose music had frozen them, lifted them, and reminded them of the beauty of human expression. The cleaner stepped back from the piano, breathing deeply and savoring the moment. It was more than applause, it was recognition, a reaffirmation of a path he had never truly abandoned, even when life demanded compromise. The journey to this moment had been long, filled with challenges and sacrifices, but it had led him to a point where his talent could shine undisturbed. And now, surrounded by the grandeur of the hall and the warmth of the audience's reaction, he felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. Backstage, the pianist gathered his thoughts. He had been humbled, challenged in a way that left a mark on his understanding of music and life. He reflected on the arrogance that had led him to mock someone he had underestimated and recognized the lesson in front of him. That true mastery is patient, persistent, and often hidden in plain sight. The cleaner's performance had reminded him that music, at its core, is not about ego or status, but about communication, emotion, and connection. It was a lesson he would carry with him long after the applause had faded. Meanwhile, the audience's enthusiasm grew. Some individuals began sharing the moment with others, pointing toward the piano and whispering about the man who had just transformed their expectations. The energy of genuine appreciation filled the room, a ripple of admiration and wonder that seemed almost tangible. Every person present felt a part of something rare, witnessing the emergence of brilliance from an unexpected source. The cleaner, standing modestly, allowed the music to speak through him, and now the applause and acknowledgement were his reward. After a while, the audience began to settle, the initial wave of excitement giving way to murmurs of appreciation and reflection. The cleaner took a moment to step away from the piano, walking slowly toward the edge of the stage. Each step was measured, calm, yet filled with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced adversity and emerged with the knowledge of their worth. People noticed his calm demeanor, the subtle strength in his posture, the grace with which he moved. There was no need for flamboyant gestures or dramatic flair. His presence alone told the story of resilience and skill. The pianist stayed close, watching intently. When he spoke, It was with genuine respect, his tone free of mockery or sarcasm. "You have something extraordinary," he said quietly. "I was wrong to doubt you. That was incredible." The cleaner nodded, accepting the compliment without arrogance. It was enough to know that his music had spoken for itself, that the years of hidden talent and silent perseverance had finally been recognized. The pianist's acknowledgement, though brief, carried the weight of understanding and reconciliation. Word of the performance began to spread quickly. Backstage staff and assistants shared the story, and whispers reached the audience before the concert officially ended. By the time the hall emptied, people were still talking, replaying the memory of the music in their minds. They discussed the precision, the emotion, and the story told without words, amazed that it had come from someone they had initially overlooked. The cleaner's ability to captivate and move everyone had turned an ordinary concert night into an unforgettable experience. In the days and weeks that followed, the cleaner's performance became a story of inspiration. Newspapers, blogs, and social media platforms shared accounts of the moment when a humble man transformed a concert hall with a single performance. People admired not just his talent, but his perseverance, humility, and ability to shine despite years of being unnoticed. He had become a symbol of hope for those who felt overlooked, a reminder that true skill and passion will always find a way to reveal themselves. The pianist, now more humble and reflective, carried the lesson forward. He thought often of the cleaner's performance and the realization that talent can exist where it is least expected. His own approach to music and teaching changed subtly but meaningfully. He learned to appreciate the quiet mastery of others and to recognize that arrogance and judgment have no place where genuine skill exists. The cleaner had, without intending, taught him a lesson that would influence his entire career. For the cleaner, life began to shift. Opportunities arose that had once seemed impossible. Invitations to perform in other halls, offers to teach, and recognition from music circles began to reach him. He remained modest, accepting only what felt right. Yet his presence in the music world became undeniable. He did not seek fame, but he embraced the chance to share his gift, knowing that his years of quiet practice and perseverance had finally been rewarded. The story of that night became more than just a performance. It became a testament to resilience, talent, and the unexpected ways life can surprise people. The cleaner had faced years of obscurity and doubt, yet his dedication had never wavered. When the moment arrived, he was ready to claim his place, not with arrogance or entitlement, but with grace, skill, and a deep understanding of the power of music. His first note had frozen the hall, but the entire performance had awakened hearts and minds, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. In the end, the cleaner returned to his music with a renewed sense of purpose. The applause, the recognition, and the acknowledgement were affirmations of a truth he had always known. Talent, passion, and dedication cannot be hidden forever. Life may place obstacles in the way, circumstances may force compromises, but what is genuine and true will always find a way to shine. His journey had been long, his struggles real, but the music had endured, and with it, he had reclaimed not only his talent but a sense of identity and fulfillment. The pianist and the cleaner occasionally crossed paths in the future, each encounter filled with mutual respect. The memory of that night remained vivid in both their minds, a reminder that talent can appear in the most unexpected places, that humility and persistence are as important as skill, and that music has the power to bridge gaps, heal misunderstandings, and reveal the extraordinary in the ordinary. The hall where it all began would forever hold the echo of that first note, a testament to a story of quiet courage and the triumph of hidden brilliance.